public eye. Apologies from Danny Kinahan. Any other apologies from anybody? No.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Draft minutes then. Copy of the draft minutes held on the 9th June 2015 is at page 5. So if members are content with the accuracy and detail. Agreed. Agreed. Chairperson's business. The Department has asked that an additional item of business be added to the agenda, namely a consultation on the geological storage of carbon dioxide. Tabled today is a revised agenda. This is at page 6 of table papers. So if members are content with that revised agenda. Agreed?
Great, yes.
Knowledge exchange seminar. Phil is unable because of other commitments to attend the knowledge exchange seminar on Wednesday the 24th to make an opening statement on behalf of the committee. Now, obviously, I can't make it myself. I am double booked that day. So, is there anybody else who would be available, would be about the building to do that, to make an opening statement on behalf of the committee? The invite from Reyes is included at table papers at page 3. And that's from 1:30 to 3 o'clock on the Long Gallery on Wednesday the 24th. Anybody be about to do that?
What does it do?
Make an opening
It
statement.
will speak for 5 minutes just.
I maybe do it.
Aye. Dead on, Gordon. Thank you. All right. Now, committee visits. It was agreed at an earlier meeting that Wednesdays are the most suitable days of the week for a committee visit, but given that some committee times have changed, it's just worth checking that it's still the same. That Wednesday is the most suitable day for committee visits. A number of those committee visits have been arranged for the Oireachtas on Thursday the 24th of September and Intertrade Ireland on Wednesday the 7th of October. So members still most flexible around those and we work around those. Agreed?
Chair, the Intertrade Ireland one, will that be a meeting job?
Well, it was to be a committee visit. You mean merge the two into one? That's on a Wednesday. Aye.
We'll have a meeting when we go down
I
there.
think that's a visit on Wednesday because I think the number of members have meetings up here on Wednesday, so we may not have a quorum for meeting. Yeah. You know, outside the normal meeting day. So generally speaking, these have been visits.
We've been down there before and had, committee meeting worked quite well.
I think the problem is that our meetings are scheduled for Tuesdays. Then move it to Wednesday, changes the whole week.
Jigging the whole thing about.
Yeah.
So it's an informal visit, really. Then.
Aye.
Yeah. And we'll get a briefing and so on.
Come on.
And remember, we had agreed that it wasn't the committee of Enterprise Trade Investment; it was members of the committee to assuage expectations and to ensure that they know exactly what they're getting. They could well be getting 2, 3, 4 members.
Well, it would be important that people commit to these things and
I know
that's well in advance. So. Right, then, informal meeting with the Oireachtas Committee on Transport and Communications. A couple of members informed the committee yesterday that they can't attend the meeting. This leaves the following members confirmed: Paul Frew, Fergal McKinney, Danny Kinahan and Martin Muller and myself. And obviously Gordon, yourself and William. I can't attend because there's morning session at the morning session because the CAL committee is holding some sort of an external meeting in that.
We're in Rostrevor, Chairman.
Yep. All right.
So we're
You're a fair wee bit away.
Yeah.
You be here all the time.
Karen McKevitt has been having her way there.
Yes. She's very pushing for it or something.
Great. So members received a PDF of the meeting pack by way of email yesterday afternoon just for that meeting on Thursday. Okay, next item is agenda item number 4, the oral briefing from Deputy Credit Unions and Cooperative and Community Benefit Societies Bill. And we have the clerk's briefing paper at page 12, ministerial correspondence at page 14, and the bill at page 15, and explanatory and financial memorandum at page 38. Pre-legislative scrutiny table, page 45. So, with us here today we have Mr. Keith Brown, Head of Financial Capability at Betty, and Miss Marie Turner, Deputy Principal Company Law at Detty, and Mr. Richard Scott, Staff Officer at Company Law. So, you're very welcome. Thanks for being with us here today. So, you may care to make an opening statement then, please, and then we'll move to questions from members. Okay?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for having us here today. I know it's been a bit of a long road to this point, but one thing that's been evident on this is the Department, the trade bodies and the committees worked very well for the good of the sectors involved. The scrutiny of this committee has genuinely developed policy on this issue. You've questioned a few issues and we've had to take time to respond to that. And I think it's a positive example of how the system can work to benefit the sector. especially in times when there's quite a few negative stories about us. Secondly, I'd like to put on record a note of thanks to the hard work of my team, Marie and Richard here today, and John Holt in the fort back at Netherley. It isn't easy bringing a bill to the Assembly, especially when many stakeholders with competing views are involved. But I think we've now got a bill that is much to the benefit of the sector. Turning to the bill itself, the measures identified for inclusion in the proposed Credit Unions and Cooperative and Community Benefit Societies Bill have been developed with the benefit of having not only the trade bodies involved but also individual credit unions, for example, and industrial and provident societies have given us their views. There was extensive pre-consultation, as you know, between June and September 2013, and we got 37 responses from a range of stakeholders, and they were generally positive to 19 policy proposals. There were a number where there was a difference of opinion between two of the three main credit union trade bodies. My officials met with three trade bodies in October 2013 to explore these before bringing considerations to yourselves. There were 5 issues that were dropped at that stage. For example, to abolish the minimum age requirements for credit unions, to introduce an alternative, easier method of dissolution, and so on. These policy proposals after this were then brought to yourselves for pre-scrutiny, and following that, a further measure was dropped, which was deferred shares. Broadly speaking, the policy proposals are consistent with those that were actually put forward by the Eddy Committee in its 2009 report. So as I've noted, it's been a long road to get here today. In addition, we've introduced a further proposal. At present, no member of Northern Ireland Industrial and Provident Society may have a shareholding exceeding £20,000, except in certain limited circumstances. The bill will, if enacted, amend this restriction, removing it entirely for non-withdrawable shares, that is, shares that can be transferred to another member but not redeemed, but maintaining it for withdrawable shares, i.e. shares that can be redeemed. In GB, UK Government increased the limit for withdrawable shares from £20,000 to £100,000 in 2014. Sectoral representatives have been keen to align this position, and we agree this would be beneficial. Finally, before we get into questions, I'd just like to thank the sector once again for engaging with us in a positive manner. From the consultation through to now, we've worked constructively together on this bill. I don't think it can be understated how important this is to make sure that our views are aligned with theirs and that it brings benefit to the sector. We all value the contribution that mutuals make to our economy and society, and this bill is not simply for the sake of legislating, it is to allow the sector to grow. It makes important changes to the law governing credit unions and industrial provident societies, removing outdated legislation, bringing credit unions and societies here into line with their GB counterparts, and enabling credit union societies to offer a wider range of options to their members. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Brown. And before we get into the detail of it, I'd like to just publicly place on record our thanks as a committee to your staff, I know, who have been here on a fair number of occasions, for their help and guidance just in seeing us through this very important piece of legislation for those of us who indeed are members of credit unions, as I am. Perhaps I should declare an interest there. But thank you and your staff for their help in seeing us through this.
Chairman, sorry, could I just declare membership of a credit union as well? I should have done that at the start. Sorry.
Be grand, William. That's grand. So thank you for that. Now, just and I know we're with most of the detail tied down, but just one or two wee items. Clause 6, that proposal 12. The relaxation of rules and application by credit unions for surplus funds. Would you be assured that none of that will jeopardise or place in any way members' money at risk?
It's just enabling provision.
One of the safeguards that already exists in the 85 order, which is the pre-existing legislation that we're amending, will be retained, which is that no more than 10% of any surplus funds can be applied towards such measures. So that safeguard will be capped, even though the minimum 3% dividend hurdle is being removed.
Okay. Right, thanks for that. Mr. Dunn, Gordon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for coming in this morning. Clause 3, Proposal 8, it talked about allowing credit unions to offer interest-free bearing shares. Do you see that of being significant benefit to credit unions in the future?
think by allowing them to offer interest-bearing shares, it puts it on a more level keel with building societies, and means that someone investing in shares in the credit union know from the outset what return they're going to get on their savings,
Yeah, and you think
rather
credit...
than a dividend,
Sorry, what was that?
rather than a dividend,
Yes,
which would
yes.
normally be payable.
Do you think it will be an advantage, a big advantage to credit unions to have this facility?
I think it will attract other savers who may say, well, I know if I invest my money in a building society or a bank, I will get that return. Whereas if you invest in the credit union, you have to wait to the end of the year to see what your dividend would be. So I can see it attracting a saver who wants to know from the outset what the return is going to be.
And do you feel that credit unions are enthused about this proposal, or do you feel that they may not avail of the facility?
Well, the consultation response is certainly the majority were in favour of it, which is why we included it in the bill.
Okay. You think it's well worthwhile then?
Yes.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Mr Flanagan, Phil.
Thanks, Patsy, and thanks for the presentation. I too declare an interest as a member of the Dublin Credit Union. In terms of Clause 1, this is something that the committee has looked at for a long time. And you know, from what we've seen, it's clear the department has tried to make some progress on this. But there are problems there in terms of dealing with some of the issues. And one of the big issues historically with credit unions is they couldn't allow partners to hold the same account, or to allow corporate members or voluntary organisations to hold accounts. And that's one of the big opportunities for growth that we see with credit unions. So it's something that we're very grateful that's contained within the proposed legislation. But in terms of the mechanisms and how that works, we're looking at a situation where a corporate organisation or a voluntary organisation won't be allowed to hold an account in the name of that organisation. It will have to be held in the name of an individual. And that may well present problems in terms of governance and the transfer and rights and liabilities and things like that. Have you any possible solution to that at all, or have you exhausted every avenue out there?
I think this has probably been the longest and most difficult issue to resolve. You know, I think the team's worked really well with HMT, FCA, PRA, BIS, and the FSCS, the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, to bring, to try and bring where we are to today. This is not something that in GB, I think it's fair to say they were terribly keen on, but it was something that we wish to do because our credit unions obviously see the advantages in it. The position we're at the moment will work. I can understand that there are issues about it being in someone's personal capacity, but we think that that's a matter for, say, for example, the voluntary organisation or the corporate body. They would have that contained within the rules. It's also up to the credit union offering the service, how it sets it out in its rules. And we think this is possibly the most effective and possibly the only way that we can put this into practice and legislation.
And is there any scope for potential changes in the future to rectify that situation?
Well, we made a commitment in February when we met with both the Irish League and the Ulster Federation that although this is where we are at present, we would continue to press bodies across the water, and we'd set up meetings if necessary, if the trade bodies thought it was useful, and we'd certainly accompany them to those to try and move this forward as much as possible. One of our main issues is that this is something that's quite unique here in Northern Ireland that we're pressing for. For example, when we spoke to the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, they didn't see that there was a bigger risk, as perhaps others have thought. But we'd certainly commit to work with both trade bodies to try and bring this to as close.
But what is the actual problem?
Well,
The problem is that unincorporated associations don't have a legal personality in law. They can't for example, borrow money, hold land. So basically, that is risky for credit unions then. If you had a sports club who were obviously unincorporated, if the credit union was to loan them money and they defaulted on that loan, for example, it's an unincorporated association can't be sued or return to pay the money back.
Right.
So it could be extremely risky for credit unions if then a named individual isn't the account holder.
This way does provide a certain amount of surety for the credit union in that an individual can be pursued through courts.
But it still leaves it less attractive for sporting clubs and voluntary organisations to go to a credit union to avail of finance compared to your traditional high street bank. And what we've been trying to do here is to increase the attractiveness of credit unions as a viable source of funding for those types of organisations. So if we're still going to be left with a situation where there's barriers, it's not the perfect solution that we had envisaged.
I think there is certainly some fairness to that, but unfortunately it's a balancing act between protecting the credit unions and creating the incentive. I think in this case it's not so much a barrier in that for example, say, community organisation, sports club, for example, you will always have a treasurer who's put in a position of responsibility. And within the sports organisation, they can have their own rules to safeguard how the treasurer interacts with the money. So it would be the case that if you were approaching a credit union, say as a sports club, and it is in that person's name, you could have a second named person, and so on. But I agree, it isn't perfect, but it is possibly the best solution.
And in terms of that scenario where you have a treasurer or an honorary trustee, that's the named person, corporate governance in an awful lot of sporting organisations would stipulate that those people can only hold that position for maybe a maximum of 5 years, but the loan may be for a longer period than that. Will this legislation allow the credit union or the body that's taken out the loan to transfer the named person to be the new recipient or the new post holder?
Yeah.
I mean, as drafted, if there's a change in individual, all rights and shares and liabilities, responsibilities will transfer from person A to person B. As originally envisaged, and as they do in GB, one account would have to close and another one would have to open. What we did over the last few months is try and find an alternative way to try and ease these administrative concerns, hence this transfer, which should make the process much more straightforward and easy.
And there'll be a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy required to do that transfer, or is it a straightforward process?
It's by and large left up to the credit union themselves. What we've stipulated in the order is that they have to set out in their registered rules how they will carry out these checks. So it's by and large in their own hands. Now, obviously, it's subject to oversight by the regulatory body, but we haven't stipulated precisely, what step-by-step guide or how precisely they have to go about it.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Spencer.
Okay, thank you. Any other member wish to add a wee bit of clarification? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed for your time, and our best wishes and thanks to the rest of your colleagues and part of the team that has supported you through that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next, just at this point in time, I'd just like to acknowledge a few visitors that we have with us here from staff at the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee at the back there. Met you very briefly yesterday. Mr. Mike Clark, the outgoing head of staff over there, Mr. Rob Cope, incoming, and Mr. Nick Taylor supported ably along the way with them. So I do wish you well in your retirement, Mr. Clark, and I'm sure you've become appraised of a lot of the issues associated with this place, both good and bad. So I wish you well in your retirement, and to yourself, Mr. Cope, I'm sure you'll be in touch with some of us during the course of your new job, so wish you well in that too. Okay. Next item on the agenda.
Questions aren't here yet for the next item.
So they're not here they're not here yet. Next item is matters rising. Just to inform members, page 75 is correspondence from the mobile phone operator 3 The organisation would like to meet with MLAs on an individual basis to discuss rollout plans for their constituencies. So if members are happy enough to know, sure you'd like to meet them, Margie. Not about your constituency, but here. Tourism events funding programme, that's at page 76, is an item there around from Tourism NI to the committee's request regarding the events funding programme. Now, I had one query on that. There's £100,000 allocated there for Sports Personality of the Year at the Odyssey. My inevitable question is, what's £100,000 for a sports personality? Maybe we'd have a wee bit of detail on what the £100,000 for is for that event. Members happy enough?
Maybe to cover the prizes, is it?
I would go for that
your
myself.
Licence fees for?
Gordon, I think I'd be entering the training already if we what?
Yeah, no, I suppose it's all about
Wouldn't you?
trying to draw it and promote it, but we would like further answers, I think.
I think so. It's pretty hefty. So, next item is agenda item number 7, legislation SR 2015, the Renewables Obligation Amendment Order 2015. We have the cover note at page 78, the SR at page 80, an explanatory memorandum at page 85, and corresponds from Bombardier Belfast at page 7 of table papers. And the rule is subject to affirmative resolution. The committee did discuss this as SL1 stage on our meeting on the 24th of March and had no comment on the rule, and it will come into operation on the 1st of July this year. The examiner of statutory rules has no points to raise as regards the technical scrutiny. So I have to put the question, if members are content with the SR, that the Committee for Enterprise, Trade and Investment has considered SR 2015, the Renewables Obligation Amendment Order Northern Ireland 2015, and recommends that it be affirmed by the Assembly. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Agenda item number 8 is legislation SR 2015/265, which is classification, labelling and packaging of chemicals amendment regulations, Northern Ireland 2015. We have the cover note at page 89. We have the SR at page 92, an explanatory memorandum at page 104, and the rule is subject to negative resolution. We discussed it at SL1 stage at our meeting on the 19th of May, and there's no comment made at that stage. So the rule is to come into operation likewise on the 1st of July 2015. The examiner of statutory rules hasn't yet reported on the rules, so members will be agreeing to the legislation subject to the examiner of statutory rules report. So I put the question then that the Committee for Enterprise, Trade and Investment has considered SR 2015, the Renewables Obligation Amendment Order Northern Ireland 2015, and has no objection to the rule. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Now, agenda item number 9 is a written briefing from the Consumer Council NI on their research into online parcel deliveries to Northern Ireland. At page 140, we have a written briefing from the Consumer Council which explores some of the issues arising from online parcel deliveries. Now, unless members are content, I know as I read through this last night, it was raising quite a number of issues of concern. So, would members, well, we can note this, but I think an oral briefing at some stage would be helpful. Read?
Yeah.
Yeah. Next item, agenda item number 10, consultation on geological storage of carbon dioxide in Northern Ireland, draft access to infrastructure regulations and draft licensing regulations. Papers for this item include the covering letter at page 10 of table papers, the consultation document page 11 of table papers, and further papers are available from the committee office. So if, like most consultations, if members are content to receive and look at those summary of responses. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, and then we move to correspondence, which is agenda item number 11. That's at page 156. We have 2 items of correspondence there listed in the index at page 156. And unless members have any particular issue they wish to raise, are prepared to note. Agreed?
Agreed.
Now, any other business? Anybody got any other business? Don't know whether Mutual Energy are there yet or not. No? There's no other business that I have, no notified business, unless anybody else has it. Now, the final bit we'll deal with, the date, time and place of next meeting. That's at Tuesday, the 23rd of June 2015, room 29 at 10 o'clock. And as I did emphasise on that occasion, whenever we were talking about this date earlier, there's a lot of stuff on the chamber related to the work of the committee. So we're hoping to get that meeting cleared up pretty efficiently and pretty quickly in the morning, so that we can move as members into the chamber to deal with those issues. And then one final reminder is that the informal meeting with the Earthquake Joint Committee on Transport and Communications is this Thursday at the 18th, room 21 at 11:30. I think members will be arriving from about 11 o'clock onwards, so if people are about the place to see them, and I think as well there's lunch menu has been submitted to members, so if they just fill it in and send it back to the committee staff as well, those that are staying for lunch. I don't know, have we got any word from our visitors? Are they going to show with us at all, or is there?
Chair, they weren't due to brief until 11 o'clock, so...
Well, they weren't due to brief till 11 o'clock.
Should be here about 1:45. Do you want to move into closed session?
Right, what we can do is maybe move into closed session then and deal with the inquiry into growing the economy and get at least some of that cleared up. Members are happy enough with that, okay? Agreed?
Right, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
I want to say the official will be back in 15 minutes.
So we'll probably be back in...
Committee Room 29. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 20.
Mutual Energy, and there's written briefing from Mutual Energy at page 70, with correspondence at pages 71 and 72. And with us here today we have, well, not yet. We have with us here today Mr. Paddy Larkin and Mr. Gerard McElroy. Paddy Larkin, the Chief Executive of Mutual Energy, Mr. Gerard McElroy, Finance Director of Mutual Energy. You're both very welcome. Hope that's not what I'm thinking it is.
That's a bit of this cable.
Well, not maybe you dug up something. But you dug up something else when you were there.
You want to?
That's the old cable.
That's a piece of the old cable. Yeah, it's just to show you the sort of scale of it, as opposed to people think it's a bit of flex we're putting in, you can get the B&Q.
We've seen it before. What is this? What is that?
That's a piece of the existing one of the interconnector cables.
Oh, well, that's not working.
Well, that's not one of the bit that we need.
It's a good part. That's heavy.
It's pretty heavy to carry up halfway down that avenue.
Oh, it's heavy stuff. Nothing else in it, no.
There's copper down the middle, must be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just set that here.
Is that a gift for the chairman, is it? Is that a gift for the chairman?
It's a very expensive gift.
Go to North Down and stay there. Absolutely.
I suppose that'd be pricey, that thing.
Oh, we're all right.
What we get?
So, anyway, thanks for attending with us here today. It's good to see you. You've been here before, so you know the form. Just make an opening statement, and then we'll take a few questions from members. Okay? Thank you.
I thought maybe because I know there's been a change of membership, so I thought maybe I'll just give a very quick introduction in terms of Moyle. The Moyle Interconnector, it was built in 2001 by NIE. It was completed in December 2001, and it is a high voltage direct current interconnector. And what that means is normally your electricity runs as alternating current, so there's converter stations at either side. There's large converter stations in Scotland and in Northern Ireland, and between them the cables run and the cables transfer the direct current, and then it's transferred back into alternating current. So the interconnector is built as two halves, so there's two 250 megawatt units. And to put that in context, the Carroot power station is around 400 megawatts. So the interconnector is sort of on a par with the likes of a power station, one of the power stations we would have. So I suppose whenever it was built in 2001, there was careful selection of the route and the converter stations and where they were located. But the key reason why it was built was to bring benefits to Northern Ireland consumers. And the benefits took a number of forms. One was security supply. So basically, because you had it, you didn't have to build another power station. It backed up the system. So if the system has a wobble at the minute, the interconnector is set so it'll immediately lift and bring power in from from across the water to support the system. It's very flexible. The interconnector can respond immediately, whereas the power station takes time. It's quite sluggish. So in terms of all of the new wind turbines and wind coming on the system, the interconnector is a good fit for that because it can respond so instantaneously. But I suppose the key reason why it was built was to try and get access to competitive priced power. So the price of power across the water, the way the market is set up is such that if the interconnector isn't flowing, bringing power in, it's because the price on this island is cheaper than across the water. So basically, any time there's cheaper power across the water, it's brought in and it holds the price down here. I suppose then the other thing to add to that is that the interconnector and the asset as a whole was sort of ripe for mutualisation, which is what our company does. It's a large capital cost, low operating costs. It basically was ideal for mutualisation and to be held as a mutual company. So, a lot of that brought a lot of financial benefits. And maybe hand over to Gerard. We'll maybe talk a wee bit more just about the scale of those financial benefits to consumers.
The benefits are probably best split into two types. It's the benefit of an interconnector as and of itself, and then a benefit of one which is mutually owned. Paddy sort of explained briefly the benefits, but there are three types of benefit for an interconnector. There's the pricing element, which is the difference in the power between the two sides. There's the security of supply. In other words, it provides the security of supply to the system. And then there's the capacity benefit. But by capacity, I mean power plants get paid for being there, so that there is a power plant that can be run and they get paid capacity payments. So there are three elements. When we were deciding what to do with the interconnector, when it's had its problems and the long-term solution, we had to figure out what is the benefits worth. And we did it in two ways. The system operator did a forward-looking, based on European standard calculations, and he came up with a figure of £16 million a year based on only the price effect. So we didn't value security of supply, didn't value the capacity benefit. We had a consultant then go backwards, because the available data is every half hour, and if you take the electricity interconnector out of all that data, you can actually work out what the electricity price would have been, and it averaged 40 million a year over the 2 years backwards. So you quickly get the very big numbers from having an interconnector, and that's without even trying to figure out what is the benefit of security of supply and the lower probability of people's lights going out, and indeed the capacity benefits themselves. So that's the sort of benefits of an interconnector. A mutual company is slightly different from other companies in that there are no dividends paid out. So the money doesn't actually go anywhere. It gets recovered in dividends and retained in the business. And the way we are set up, we get a very lower cost of capital. Electricity is paid for in Northern Ireland, and the companies will provide the infrastructure over 30, 40 years, and the companies then get paid over 30, 40 years. So NIE will collect its money, not when it builds something new, but over the 30, 40 years that it's used. And they get paid what's called a cost of capital. Our cost of capital ranges in the 2 to 3% range. Other companies typically would be in the 4 to 7%. Now, when you're talking about assets, of which 70% of the cost is the capital value, if you can have that capital cost, it's massive, massive savings. And then the last bit, probably the best way to demonstrate it would be we would only collect the money that we need, because it doesn't need to go to dividends or shareholders. You only collect it if you actually need it. So over the period where we would have an entitlement of nearly £190 million, we've only collected 46. So you waive the entitlement if you don't require it, which is quite different.
So as a wee bit of background then, just a quick run through on the faults. I mean, I think the interconnector has had 4 faults for submarine cable, which is pretty of the same type and nature, which is very unusual for submarine cables in that period of time. The cables contain manufacturing defects, and those defects, if they're in locations in the seabed and they're exposed to external forces, such as, it can happen whenever you get sand movement or scour around the cable. So basically, if you're exposed to moderate external forces, it can cause the insulation to break. So basically, the the long and short of it, I know we talked about the long and short of it was we need to replace that part of the cable that is prone to these failures. And the only way to do that is to put new cables in. Now, the cable I sent round there's two conductors inside it, a low voltage and high voltage conductor. It's just the low voltage conductor bit that's the problem. So we're replacing the new replacement cables to replace the low voltage conductor. The high voltage one will stay. So the existing cable we'll continue to need, and then the new cable will replace it. So we set out to basically procure new cables, and the other thing we set out to do was to try and hold the manufacturers to account for the defects that are in the cables. Now it's quite difficult because the cables were laid, passed all their tests in 2001. They've been through a 5-year warranty period, which is actually quite an extensive warranty period for cables. But we were going through a legal process with the manufacturers, and we were also going through a procurement process to try and bring new cables to bear. So at the end of last year, both those processes, I suppose, came together. There was a period of intensive negotiation with the original cable manufacturers, and basically we did a deal, and we signed the contract in February 2015, and that deal meant that the price we were paying for the new cables was a lot less than what we had expected and what we had estimated and what the market was saying, and actually they came up with a fast-track process to actually deliver the cables to complete the project entirely by the middle of next year, which is at least a year earlier than we had expected. So I suppose doing the deal with the manufacturer, we firmly believe was a good deal for consumers that we needed to grab with both hands. So I suppose from February 15, we have been fast-tracking the project. Work has been underway. There's 2 cables to be replaced. I was saying then it's split in 2 halves. There's 2 cables to be replaced. One of the cables is manufacturer's completed. It's in a turntable sitting in Halden in Norway, ready to be loaded out onto the cable laying vessel, which is a vessel called Skagerrak, and it's to be loaded out on the 27th of June. It should be arriving in the Irish Sea at the end of July, start of August, and we'll be laying the cable onshore. I think it's Northern Ireland first, and then over to Scotland. So the cable has to be laid. What's involved is you lay the cable on the seabed, and then you use a water jetting process, a machine that puts water jets around the cable and fluidizes the seabed so the cable sinks into it. There's some areas where the seabed is so hard that you can't get it down very far. So in those areas you come along with rock dumping. It's called rock dumping. It's actually quite scientific. There's tubes go right down to the seabed, and you place it exactly over where the cable is to protect the cable. It protects the cable, but it also allows fishing gear or anything to go over the rocks. There's a number of other items out there like telecoms cables, gas pipelines, etc., that we have to negotiate our way around and cross in places. So the project one cable's made, ready to be laid. That'll be starting in the summertime. We've been out and surveyed the route. There are a number of anomalies. I mean, basically, there's quite a lot of unexploded ordnance in that area of the Irish Sea, and we have to try and pick a route through them. It's a challenge. We're still on track and on budget, but it is a challenge. It's a difficult spot. Things have moved around since the last time we were out there, so we're working our way through that, and we probably have to go out with another survey before the actual main cable laying vessel arrives to try and it's very difficult to actually tell what these things are in terms of you can find there's metal and it looks like something, but it could be a barrel, so and you don't want to poke too much of them. So it is a challenge. It's probably the biggest challenge we have currently on the project, but it is. I mean, the project's well underway. The type tests on the cable have all been done. The cable we're putting in is one that has lots of history. So, it's a good long track record. The cables we put in 2001, we were the only one of its type in the world. So we're going to make sure the new ones have a long track record. But we still required that they were all type tested in the factory, so they go through the full sort of development tests. That's all passed. Cable's ready to lay. Probably the biggest challenge are these anomalies out at sea. The main consents that we need to do the process, the marine licence, has been granted. But any consent, as you know, there's conditions, planning conditions, if you like. So we have to satisfy the planning conditions, but they're all underway, and we don't have any major concerns around that. So, I mean, I suppose, aside from it is a major project in a submarine environment, which can be difficult out there with weather and the seabed conditions and things that are, I suppose, on land. Lots of stuff happened on land, but it's all cleared away. Things that happen at sea don't get cleared away; they just sit there. So we have to deal with that. But I suppose the positive is that the first cables manufactured, should be laid during the summer, buried, and hopefully will be tested and up and running by December of this year, and the full project complete by the middle of next year.
Okay, thank you. Just to get back to your issue, you referred to them as unexploded ordnance. What are they? Are they bombs, or I should ask? Well, obviously you're not going to go and look at them. Have you commissioned sort of
we have
explosives experts to go down and find out what these are? Or?
Yeah, we have explosive experts on the survey vessels. So the survey vessels send down remote operated vehicles, and the remote operated vehicles do tests.
Yes.
Some of them are on the seabed, and some of them are actually underneath the seabed. The ones that are on the seabed, we can tell a lot about them, and we really can decide whether they are or they aren't unexploded ordnance, and we can tell if they are or they aren't ones that were discarded with their detonators removed, or whether they were ones that had dropped from the sky and didn't explode.
What are they? You say ordnance. What are they? Bombs or something?
Yeah, after the end of the two wars, all the surplus material was taken out of Stranraer into the Irish Sea, into the Beaufort Dyke, and dumped overboard.
Oh, dear, right.
So we're talking thousands and thousands of tons of it. Anecdotally, the fishermen were paid by the boatload. So if you have to go all the way to the Beaufort Dyke, you might get a few more loads if you didn't quite go that far. So the dispersal rate is probably further than you would have expected. And then over time it moves, so seabed, it's moved, it's been known in the area. How we locate them is sort of it's a magnet. Probably my non-scientific version is a giant magnet which can pick up the magnetic.
Right, now, just that brings me on to the next question, is clearly you're trying to wind your way through these, which could be very difficult if some of them are not exposed at all.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have to, I was listening very carefully to the process that you use for laying off the cable, that you kind of, if you like, this jetting process that you use so that you go down and then it covers it over or whatever. So clearly there'd be other issues there. And you would need some fairly detailed and experienced advice to go there. Before you even go there. Now then that brings me on to the next part of it is, how much extra does that add to the costs of laying the cable to do that, and does it add any more time to the laying of the cable? Because obviously you're going to have to be very careful about where you're going here.
I think it does add cost and time, but we have provided for this. What we have been exposed to is worse than what we expected.
Right.
But the costs haven't. I mean, we expected to have someone on a survey vessel, for example, and we expected to have to do the analysis. Right. So the cost hasn't really been more than we had budgeted so far. And the key thing is, if we can get a route through without having to move any of this equipment, we'll be okay. And the guys are working on that. Everybody's working on getting a route through. Effectively, you just don't want to touch it. So, but you have to leave enough space that allows for a margin of error getting through. So, it does affect cost and time, but we had provided for it, and so far we're okay on the provision. It's only if we actually can't get a route through and we have to move any of the.
So, just to get it clear, then, no extra costs have been added to the project that you had budgeted for, that you included in your overall?
No, nothing beyond our provision. So we did provide for costs for this. Yeah.
Right, because obviously, ultimately, the consumer could wind up picking up any additional costs.
We don't, I mean, we've been through a fairly, ultimately the cost that falls on the consumer is called the CERT call, but effectively if you just call this, it's the use of system charge for the MOIL. So there's use of system charge for NIEs, wires, there's use of system charge for the MOIL. And we indicated back in, I think the letters with the regulator was April time, March time probably was. But we indicated then we had hoped to make no change to what the customers pay for the use of system charge for MOIL for next year. But we didn't know then. We had more calculations to do. We actually we need to put the figure in by the end of this month, and we've been doing quite a bit of sums in terms of our provisions and all the rest. But we're holding that, so we're keeping that at the same as last year. Even with these challenges.
Okay, thank you. Mr Flanagan. Phil.
Thanks, Patsy, and thanks for the presentation. You've said that there's no additional cost, that this cost has been provided for. What sort of a figure are you talking about?
In terms of the extra costs associated with this, it's going to be, well, sorry, it's, we don't expect to be any more than £1 million.
Right, and who's going to foot that bill?
Well, that's we hope to pay for most of that out of our reserves, the company reserves.
But ultimately, that will be £1 million that can't be put back into reducing customers' bills. So if you didn't have to spend this £1 million on this project, that £1 million would be taken out of your operating costs somewhere else, or it would ultimately go to reducing customers' bills at some stage.
Well, if you took that £1 million and as totally ring-fenced £1 million. But I suppose a lot of the work we did with the regulator was looking at the project overall and saying basically that is it better to actually spend the money on fixing MOIL, or is it better not to spend the money and just leave the money with consumers?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm talking about the discovery of these suspected explosives around the cable.
Yeah.
What additional cost is that?
Well, we had. I suppose what I'm saying at this was the same answer to Patsy's question. There's no additional cost at this stage. It was within our provisions for in terms of what we were talking about, the cost of replacing MOIL. That was allowed for in it. But there is a challenge to see that we can actually pick a route through without having to move the ordnance. If we have to move them, then there could be extra costs. So
you haven't calculated how much it could cost them?
Well, we don't think we're going to have to move anything. So it's going to be. It's not going to be anything. But
and who's helping you with it? Is the British MOD involved in this in any way, or
they are at the very end. If we have to move anything, they are. But it's a company called Alpha E, which basically.
But who's paying them? You?
Yes. Actually, the Nexans pay them. It's part of the project, so it's part of their cost.
But is there not an understanding that this shouldn't be the responsibility of electricity customers here to cover, and that it should be the responsibility of whoever contracted some outfit to dump them in the middle of the Irish Sea? Have you had those discussions with anybody yet?
I suppose I haven't, but those type of discussions I understand took place many years ago when people wanted to put any sort of infrastructure across the Irish Sea, and we're told, well, just there's a lot of stuff there that you're going to have to go through. So the decision was taken that that we just have to go through we would take either leave us isolated in terms of, I suppose, the natural gas pipeline actually goes a lot closer to the Beaufort Dyke than where we are.
Right.
So the decision was taken. No, the benefits of bringing natural gas to Northern Ireland outweighs the, or of course you could go via Iceland, but I suppose it's a risk that was taken and discussed, but I haven't had those discussions.
Right. One of the issues that I wanted to discuss with you is, and I proposed at the committee right to the remuneration committee within Mutual Energies about the salaries of yourself and Gerard. And if you look at the 2013-14 figures, between the two years and your salaries, your performance-related pay and your pension contributions, it was £450,000. Is that something that you can justify to electricity consumers, that such a high level of money is put on their bills to pay two people within what's a mutualised company which is run in the interests of consumers?
Well, I think it is the Remuneration Committee needs to respond to that. I mean, I suppose it's probably not totally appropriate for me to. I don't set my salary. Remuneration Committee do. I know the ETA Committee had written to our chair back in January, February time, and we responded on that. In terms of the Remuneration Committee do try to be as transparent as possible. In fact, I haven't found any other company in Northern Ireland that is as transparent. There's 12 pages on how the remuneration is set, total transparency on what is in it, line by line. But whenever it was coming here, it was the clerk had explained it was just a Moyle update. I've been knowing about the remuneration. It certainly would come along, and both the chairman of the company and the chairman of the Remuneration Committee is totally happy to come along and answer further questions on what's in that annual report.
That's fair enough.
Okay.
Paddy. Thank you.
I suppose the only point I would make is that there's a lot of commentary out there about the failure of the interconnector to work effectively, but yet the level of performance-related pay and deferred performance-related pay in 13-14 was £67,000 for one years, and over it was 55 or 54 for the other individual. So, considerable sums of money there for performance-related pay for what consumers see for something that isn't really operating as well as it should. So it might be useful for us to engage with the chairs of both the board and the Remuneration Committee to take those issues up.
I don't expect you to come along and justify yourself on that, Paddy, but obviously those are probably questions for other people who make these determinations and decisions on them.
Well, they're totally happy to come along, and they've told me to tell you that they are.
That's okay.
So either to come along in person, or by letter, or whatever way you want to do it. I mean, we are a mutual company. We are, the values and what we stand for in terms of operating for consumers is pretty darn important to us. The Remuneration Committee do have to make decisions about what the remuneration levels are. The sent the response back in terms of they use systems that most companies use in terms of comparator benchmarks and the checking. They get external parties to come in and check to see what the see what the salaries and pay levels should be, etc. But so. I think the most important thing, certainly for me, and I suppose it's me and Jared's salary that appears in the Belfast Telegraph, the transparency is, absolutely critical to both our chair and the chairman of the Remuneration Committee. Want to make sure they have everything that they consider is in there, so that you do have those 12 pages. It's very difficult whenever you bring in external companies to get comparators, because other companies just aren't that transparent at all. You don't know, So, yeah, but I mean, as I say, I think that's. Please organise for another day, and they're happy to come along.
I just want the two to also be aware that it's nothing about either you two individuals. It's about the way the organisation works. So it doesn't matter whether it was you two or anybody else in those positions. I'd still be asking the same questions.
I understand that.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Dead on, Phil. Thank you. Mr. Frew, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and again, knowing a wee bit about it, and there's no doubt we need interconnection, absolutely vital for competition and price of electricity, of course, and security of supply. Two major issues, but whilst security of supply is vitally important for the operation of Northern Ireland, it has to be balanced up by the cost of that security. Again, I must commend you with regards to the project being delivered ahead of schedule. That's the first thing. And then obviously the cost of restoration is significantly lower. There's no doubt about it, interconnection does keep the price down, and you've relayed the benefits of that. And you talk about 16 million per year benefit to the customer base who pay for energy ultimately. But can you tell us a wee bit more about the who actually will have to pay for the cost, the capital cost of restoration? how that actually will impact on most definitely the industrial bill payer. And then if you can tell us a wee bit more about the 24 million of the use of systems charge, because that again is different, I would assume, because that's the concurrent, the ongoing cost, and how that will be different, this year, or why should it be different this year compared to other years? I do acknowledge that bringing 250 megawatts back into play in Northern Ireland is very significant. When you look at the decisions the previous minister took last year on security of supply issue and how much that cost us to obtain that security of supply, 250 megawatts is very significant to Northern Ireland. So I suppose it's about the concern I have about, because every time a department or a utility regulator or a system operator or energy provider makes a decision, it usually means bills go up. Whether that's by design or whether that's indirect influence. So how can you assure me and the customer base out there that the capital cost of restoration won't go down and affect business and customers? And then explain a wee bit more about the use of system charge.
Okay. I think one of the points is, because we're a mutual company, any money that is in our reserves stays in the reserves, and basically it's applied back on, to solve consumers' problems or to avoid charging consumers. It's very different from an equity-based company where any money that's in the reserves are swept up and paid out as dividends, so the money disappears. So in our company, any money that we accumulate in reserves are for consumers. And over the years, the auctions that Moyle, whenever Moyle sells capacity as auctions, it has recovered more than it needed to in that. So the use of system charge, I think Gerard talked earlier about only 47 million has been charged through the consumers as use of system, as opposed to 190 around that we actually needed. So the Moyle Interconnector has accumulated these reserves. So basically, whenever it comes to, there's more money to be spent. If it was an equity-based company, the company would say, well, that needs to be financed and it'll be put on as a charge over the next 20 years or whatever. We've looked at our reserves and said, look, can we use those reserves as much as we can to apply to doing the job? So that's what we're intending to do. Now, obviously, if you could also use the reserves to avoid the use of system charge onto consumers. But what we're doing is we're using the reserves to pay for the capital works, but then the use of system, so the normal cost of paying for Moyle is 24 million, has to be charged through.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could say, well, the 24 million, you could use the reserves for one or the other, but so customers in the whole sense, if you take it, the customers own the mutual energy. Ultimately, it's for their benefit. Any money that it has, I suppose, is customers' money, so it's gone out of it. But whenever you actually say, well, but what about the actual electricity bills that are hitting people's mats and businesses' desks? It's just the 24 million that comes through there because they don't see that they had any benefit from this reserve. So I'm hoping that has answered your question in terms of the capital cost.
So on that, the 16 million per year benefit, is that net benefit? Or is that, you then take away the 16 million from the 24 million?
I think we said, in terms of the capital cost, if you just took on a pure, if you were doing on a business feasibility study, and looking at that 16 million, around 3 years the payback period. So you'd say this is a job well worth doing. It's around 3 years and you get money back. So that's purely looking at that. The 24 million is what actually hits the bills, which isn't the capital cost. It's different. The 16 million is a study. Whenever you say, right, what is the interconnector worth going forward, it's extremely difficult. That 16 million comes from the system operator doing a study, taking a year. They took 2020. They assumed things like the North-South Interconnector was built. They assumed things like the amount of wind that was built, the level of carbon price floor and GB and all of that. So there's a lot of assumptions in it. So the 16 million, I would definitely say it's very conservative. But that's what it came up with, the £16 million benefit. We also did another study which basically I think is a lot more accurate, and it looks back, and it looked back at the last 3 years, and it had all the figures and all the numbers that went in, and just said, let's just take Moyle out of that. Just say Moyle wasn't there, and redo the whole market prices. And whenever they did that, it came up to, that was the 40 million.
40 million,
So it's the 40 million a year, which I think is a lot more realistic. And it doesn't include things like security supply benefit that you talked about as well.
They're not particularly visible to customers, because all that means is the supply companies' charges for where they were buying the power from is cheaper, and that sort of feeds down the chain. So you don't see the saving. You may see the cost of Moyle. The other thing is, you asked about businesses. The usage system becomes one of the charges, which then how that actually impacts a business versus a domestic customer. Well, the regulator and the supply companies, they will decide, what the split is and how you portion between the two. So
that's the tariff itself.
Yeah.
Well, at the minute, it's been a couple of months since I looked at the website, Sony's website, but we basically import through Moyle at present. Except for maybe a half-hour period in the morning time, around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning.
It's been a wee bit more since April, actually.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, because of the carbon price floor across the water, it's pushed prices up.
Right, okay.
So we actually do a wee bit more export now overnight.
Right, okay. What's better for the Moyle, for the mutual energy? Is it better to import or export, or does it not matter what direction we go?
For us as a business, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're there to provide the infrastructure and allow shippers to trade. I think for customers on this island, it's better to import, because if you import, it brings the price down. If you export, it brings your price up.
That leads me on to my next question: is how then will how will the north-south interconnector affect the Moyle? Because surely at the minute there's enough capacity being enough generation in the island of Ireland. It means that if we get the north-south interconnector, which we all believe we need, how then does that affect the Moyle interconnector, which I believe is equally as important?
Yeah. It shouldn't make a lot of difference to us, because at the minute the market runs as if there's no constraints on the island of Ireland. So it works out the price as if electricity can readily flow wherever it wants. And our schedule with the suppliers is worked out at that stage. It's worked out at day ahead stage. Then the system operator comes in and goes, well, actually, I can't flow it that way. There's constraints on this, and I'm going to have to flow things different ways. So then they come in and overlay, other problems. But generally, what happens is power stations in Northern Ireland go up, and power stations in the south go down. The interconnector tends to sit steady. I mean, it's interesting, actually. There's a lot of similar type constraints on the other side of the interconnector in Scotland, and we've been working. We're working with National Grid quite a bit. Two things. One is to try and minimise the amount of times it impacts us, because we can be impacted by problems in Scotland. And the second thing is to actually sell services back to National Grid where we can support their network. By, so if their system gets a wobble, we actually can supply power from the single electricity market right into it. And we've got arrangements in place at the minute both ways. So either system gets a wobble, Moyle comes in and support, and we get a revenue stream from that, which again reduces the amount of money that has to be paid by customers' bills.
You get capacity payments?
We don't get capacity payments. No, at the minute we don't get capacity payments. Our suppliers get a capacity payment if they're flowing, and we hope that some of that's reflected in the price they pay at our auction, but we don't get capacity payments directly.
Do you get constraint charge or payments?
No, we don't. Our suppliers do.
Just picking up on something you said there, Paddy. You said at the minute you don't get capacity payments. Were you anticipating getting them?
The new, the single electricity market is being replaced by ISEM, and they're under discussion as to how the capacity payments will work in the future. And they're also introducing capacity payments in GB. And in GB, they are actually one of the things they're proposing is that an interconnector owner can apply for and receive capacity payments. On this side, the proposal at this stage is just so that the capacity payments have to be able to be applied across the water. Yes. So they're talking about allowing generators across order to be able to participate in the market here, which is it's very difficult to know how that would work because you can't actually call, you can't dispatch them, you can't ring them up and say, start generating for me now. So that's just all I meant. At the moment, we don't.
Okay, thank you.
How do you view it? Sorry, how do you view ISEM?
I think it's to a certain extent it's a necessary evil. It's EU driven, and being part of the EU, that's the rules for the electricity market across Europe. Our market was, not compatible at all with what was there, so there's quite a lot of changes to be made. I think the benefits of the changes are fairly long term. I don't think we'll see any major short-term benefits.
So does that mean there's an upfront cost?
I'm sure there will be. I mean, it's a regulatory project, but there's and anything out, there's going to be a lot of systems going to have to be done. There's going to be a lot of changes, even in our own organisation. I mean, we have we've probably two people employed just working on the EU changes, and that's just on the electricity side. On the gas side, we have another band of people who are working at introducing EU compliance measures on the system. So I think it's a necessary evil. I think probably it makes sense to get yourself in a bigger market. Settle the markets across the borders should bring benefits, but I think they're fairly long term.
Is there any aspect of ISEM that fills you with dread? Transparency issue, the way the spot markets work with the generators?
For us as an interconnector, there's a number of concerns. I wouldn't say fill us with dread. We change at the minute. We're like a toll road. We sell space on the interconnector for people to flow power from one place to another. The proposals for the new market is that we won't do that anymore. What we'll sell is a financial hedge between the two markets. So someone can buy an amount of. So we have 500 megawatts capacity. So we sell 500 hedges, and if someone has one of these hedges, whenever after the day, depending on what the price is on either side, they'll either get money or they'll have to pay money. And economically and theoretically, that all works fine. But no one else does it. So it's it doesn't fill us with dread, but we have serious concerns as it's something very, very new and untried and untested that we're putting in. So we just have to be very, very careful that it actually works for everybody.
You tend to find that interconnectors don't quite work the way economic theory says they should, and it's just customers, supply companies. So they should move automatically when the power price on one side is different from the power on the other. It should flip 100% this way, 100%. That's not how they work. How they work is a guy has sold customer for 3 years. He's bought it somewhere in Scotland. He's bought interconnect capacity. As far as he's concerned, I'm bringing that over and I'm giving it to him. You get practical ways that interconnectors are used, which are not the way economic theory would suggest. Now, this new model is quite different for us. We're selling financial hedges in the market. We're more like a bank. So it is quite a different model of operation.
What communication have you had with the utility regulator or Sony on this issue?
Oh, very. I mean, we're hand in glove with them. We're working with them on it. We have one of our guys is actually who's writing the rules in Europe as well. So no, I mean it's very, very close cooperation. In fact, we're hosting a sort of all-island session next week in our offices on financial transmission rates that the utility regulator is inviting people to.
Have you any concerns around the energy division within Derry and how they will understand it and work it?
I mean, it's a developing system, and I think everybody is, coming to terms with it, but no particular concerns. I mean, things aren't fixed. There isn't all the answers aren't there yet. So obviously, there's a lot more questions than answers at the minute. But that doesn't mean that things are wrong. It's just where we are in the process.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
So that concludes our session with you for today anyway. Paddy, thank you very much for your time, and that was very useful. Thank you. Okay, members, that unless anybody has any other business, that concludes our business for today. And thank everybody for their attendance and questions. Okay, thank you.
39.